I don't know what it is about this little fly, but it catches fish. This is the woolly worm tied with Larva Lace materials. Here's how you tie it. You can either use a nymph hook or a streamer hook for this pattern. I'm using a wet fly nymph hook, a Daiichi 1710 and a size 12. My woolly worms tend to be on the smaller side. Get your hook firmly planted in your vise and start off by reaching for some .02 lead-free wire. This is going to be used to add a little bit of weight to the fly. Add a dab of super glue on the front side of the hook, about an 1/8 inch behind the hook eye. You don't need a lot of super glue, just a dab will do. And then begin wrapping your lead-free wire forward over the top of that super glue section and twist it off about an 1/8 inch back from the hook eye. Then you can tighten it up on the back side by pushing all the segments together and continue wrapping rearward with that lead-free wire until you're satisfied you have enough. And then I just pinch it off with my fingernail and then mash that tag end down. Using ultra thread, 70 denier, get it started on the front side of the hook. As you wrap back, wrap over the tag piece of thread to prevent your thread wraps from going in between the lead-free wire. Wrap over the top of that lead-free wire and back over it again before trimming your tag end of thread and bringing your thread to the back side of the hook. Then we're going to tie in our first material, which is red shimmer. This red tag on this woolly worm is a key indicator of this fly. Any red material I think will do. A lot of people use yarn or marabou. I'm going to trim a small piece of shimmer from the hank. Bring the cut end to the hook shank to be tied in. That way I can tie it even with the end of that lead-free wire so that there's an even body. Capture that shimmer down and make securing wraps rearward to the bend of the hook. Then you can trim your shimmer tail to any length you'd like. Mine's about 1/4 inch in length. Next material that needs to go on is our hackle feather. I'm going to pluck a smaller hackle feather from a Ewing premium hackle cape. I don't like to tie these woolly worms with too large of hackle. They just look messy and fish probably wouldn't care, but I certainly don't like it. So I always try to find a feather that's on the smaller side. Begin by preening the fibers of the feather rearward, holding the tip of the feather by stroking those fibers back to splay them out and straighten them on the stem of the feather. That will leave you with the tip of the feather to be tied onto the hook shank. I just leave the entire tip and capture it on the back side of the hook and then wrap forward to cover that entire feather tip and then rearward again to capture in our next material. For the body, I'm going to use Ultra Chenille in just a plain old black color. The nice thing about this woolly worm is that it works regardless of whether there's frills or sparkle or flash in it. You can tie the body with some dubbing or with some crystal chenille, estaz, but it doesn't really need that. I trim off a 3 to 4 inch piece of Ultra Chenille, pull off the fuzzy bits on one end of the strand to reveal the woven rope underneath. That's going to be my tie-in point. Go ahead and capture that on the back side of the hook shank, tying it in towards the bend of the hook. And then bring your thread back to the front, just in front of the lead-free wire. Then we begin making touching wraps forward with that chenille. Again, we want this body to be relatively flat and even throughout without a taper. Once you get your chenille to the front side of the lead-free wire, capture it with your thread with a few wraps over the top, few wraps in front. Trim off your excess chenille and then make securing wraps to clean up that area a bit. We're going to palmer the hackle forward next. Begin by holding the hackle feather by the butt section of the stem, lifting it straight up and stroking all the individual fibers rearward to try and angle them in that direction. Take your time with this process just to make sure your hackle feather lays down the way you want it to, moving forward on the hook shank. I make open wraps with this hackle, almost trying to run it in between the sections of chenille that have already been placed on the hook. Just try and keep them evenly spaced as you go forward and continue to preen those feather fibers rearward as you wrap. I make a few extra wraps of hackle once I get to the front in front of that lead-free wire before capturing the hackle stem down with my thread with multiple wraps, and make a few wraps in front before trimming off the excess and cleaning up the head with thread to cover up the piece of stem that remains and any other fibers that might be sticking out. If there are fibers pointing forward, I just pull them back with your fingers and make some wraps over the top to force them back again. After you get that secured and cleaned up, you can whip finish or half hitch on the front side of your fly and trim off your thread. The final step that I like to do is just add a bit of UV resin to the head to secure it and make it look nice. I just add a drop on either side of the head of the fly before hitting it with the light to set it up nicely. It's kind of a goofy looking fly, the woolly worm, but it works. A friend of mine sent me a photo of her woolly worm after it had been decimated by high mountain fish, grayling and trout, and asked what the name of it was so that she could tie some more. This woolly worm, whatever it is about it, just catches fish. It's great for panfish as well in the spring and summer months, and you can't go wrong having a few in your box. I hope this helps you out, and I hope it helps you catch some more fish on your home waters. These are all the materials you'll need to tie the woolly worm. Head down to your local fly shop and ask for Larva Lace by name. If they don't carry Larva Lace, make sure they go to hagensfish.com or email Lorie to ask for the best synthetic fly tying materials on the market. Larva Lace is a product of Hagen's. It's a family-owned and operated fishing wholesale business in Mitchell, South Dakota. We manufacture fly tying materials and fishing products for all species and situations. Thanks for tying with Larva Lace. Here's to tight lines and well-tied flies.